Hello and welcome to Fulfillment Therapy. My name is Maddie, Kendra Nielsen's COO, and today you'll be listening to episode 253, Differentiation in Marriage, Maintaining Individuality While Growing Together with Kendra as a guest on the Get Your Marriage On podcast. We hope you enjoy.
Kendra, welcome to the Get Your Marriage On podcast. How are you today?
I am doing so well. Thank you, Dan.
Great. It's fun to get to know you a little bit better. We have this common connection. We went to college together. We probably even lived next door to each other in the same apartment complex for a while. And here you are, saving lives, saving marriages in your work as a marriage therapist. Kendra, have you ever been in a situation where you felt enormous pressure to conform to what the group wanted or to what your brain was telling you was a reasonable thing to do? Yet, the act of conforming or giving in to that pressure would mean there'd be some sort of a self-betrayal, like you would have been going against your higher self in that. And what was that situation like and what did you do?
Yeah, great question. The first thing that comes to mind when I think about that was in my faith community, it was more standard, or at least I felt like it was, to be the stay-at-home mom, to be just really devoted to your spouse. There's nothing wrong with that devotion and your family, but to such a degree that there was like this enmeshment, the way that I was viewing it anyway. I felt very lost, honestly, pretty depressed, anxious. I didn't really even have words for it at the time. And probably the first 10 years of our marriage, I felt pretty lost and unfulfilled. And I felt like this need, this calling, this desire to go get my master's. And yet all around me, I felt like I was getting this other information. No, that's only what selfish people do. Or, you have young kids, all of these things. So it wasn't like people were directly rude to me or anything like that. But these other messages that I was getting, it's like, you shouldn't do that. So in that regard, I felt like it was sacrificing what I felt would really help my soul sing. And yet my understanding at the time in my faith community was that was bad. That was wrong. With that example that I just gave, the part that is honestly still a little difficult to talk about is then what it meant in our marriage. So my husband had really good points. Like he thought our kids were still a little too young. This would be hard on our family. This would be hard on our marriage. All of these valid points. But in that, I had already been putting his values and his needs and his desires ahead of my own for so long without really articulating what I was doing, even though he wasn't necessarily asking. He's a wonderful man. But I started to get lost and I started to prioritize his desires over my own. And that really created that resentment. So that's what I was talking about, that enmeshment where it just got muddled. So when I think about, honestly, differentiation feels a little elusive to me sometimes. And I talk about it with clients all the time, but I'm still trying to navigate that and figure that out. Differentiation is that ability to maintain that strong sense of self while remaining emotionally connected to other people still. And that's a key piece that I sometimes forget too. And that's when you don't have to manage the other person's feelings or fix it or jump in, but that's maintaining that sense of self with your values, with your beliefs, without, and this is key too, without demanding that your partner or your spouse changes. I still want to change them all the time, and I have a good story for that later. But also managing your own emotions, your own reactions, and respecting your partner's individuality. That is so hard to do. And I feel like it gets muddled so much. And a big part of that is also maintaining healthy boundaries.
A lot to this.
It could be 20 episodes.
So maybe for our listeners, let's pick 2 or 3 common marriage advice that people might hear and that might make you cringe, Kendra, and let's dissect them. Let's
Sure.
go there. What do you say?
Let's start with, there's so many of them. I'm sure you have your own that you could say. But one that I really don't like because of my personality is never go to bed angry.
I've heard that too. Never go to bed
Yeah.
angry.
Like, who decided that that was a great idea? Because I take a lot longer to process than my husband. He's so quick about it. He's so used to, in his family culture, they just had a lot of quick, explosive feelings and they'd work it out really quickly. But I have to take sometimes 48 hours even to be like, why is this bothering me so much? And so to work it out quickly makes me feel angry and resentful. So a differentiated approach to this would be more like recognizing that you're different for not having to conform to what somebody else is, but then giving yourself that time and that space to pause and to reflect and manage your own emotions, your own side, without getting sucked into that narrative or story and being able to stay grounded. Yeah.
So better advice would be It's not about going to bed angry. It's about making sure you have time to process for both of you.
And respecting the different timetable of each one. If one is really quick, then you have to do it that way. But when both can come to the table with a clear, calm mind, we do this with conflict resolution too. If you're not both in that space, just wait until you are so that it is more effective and you're not in that fight, flight, or freeze, and you can actually have some progress in your conversation.
Yeah. I read about John Gottman, who's one of the country's foremost marriage researchers. In
Right.
Seattle, he had a love lab,
Uh,
and he'd invite couples to come and live in an apartment for a while, but he'd
uh,
hook them up to all these sensors on their body, measuring heart rate, body temperature, blood pressure, and they'd observe them. Some of the situations they'd be in would be tense, like how they would argue and fight. Then they would go back through and view all the video footage and try to code and make sense of couples that thrive versus couples that really struggle. One thing that he said is there's a 0% chance of having an effective argument when you're both elevated.
Right.
Your thinking part of your brain tends to go offline. So it's really about being able to maintain this. If you can just calm that down and come to conflict, at least with some sort of a settled down nervous system, I think you're going to be far more effective. So if that means going to bed, so you have a good sleep, so you're settled, so then you can now approach things with fresh eyes, I think
Yeah.
that's much better advice.
And I will tell you what, I always thought I had to conform to this before. So I would force it. And I was not very sweet and lovely. But when you give me 48 hours, I am so willing to own my part or even 24, but not before then. So if you
Mhm.
want a genuine apology, maybe you should wait a little longer for your spouse to cool down.
Yeah, that's good. What's another piece of advice that people might hear that kind of makes you cringe?
Yeah, this one I don't hear quite as much, but it is something I cringe even maybe more so because I saw myself doing this and it ties into my story. And that's always put your spouse first. And
Yes.
especially in faith communities, you see this one a little bit bigger. And that
Mhm.
neglects that self care and those individual needs. Jennifer Finlayson Fife talks about this, but that one up, one down relationship where you think other people matter more or less. And that really resonated with me, but it took a long time for me to understand that concept. And what ended up happening and what happens with a lot of my clients, because I'm a therapist. I don't know if you mentioned that. I don't remember. But
Mhm.
I was just filled with resentment. And so many of my clients are too, when we are giving, and then we are empty, like that gas tank or that cup. Like, how can you effectively give to others when you are always putting other people first? And I know there's something beautiful about that when it comes to altruism, but personally, I didn't feel like it was coming from a healthy space. It came from a space of resentment, exhaustion,
Mm.
then bitterness. And I'm like, I am definitely not my best self when I'm putting my spouse first, unless it's something like it's a free will offering and you are very grounded and you're able to, again, going back to that differentiation, where you're able to maintain that sense of self, where you are doing it because you want to, not because you feel like you have. I don't know if
Mhm.
you've noticed anything like that in your life, Dan, but I definitely have lots of examples, especially in early marriage, where that something like that is shown.
And that's advice I hear at church too and other places. And I think it's all good intentioned. You
Yeah,
put others first.
absolutely.
This is the way Christ did it and things like that. Perhaps a more nuanced approach would be my understanding is we want to sacrifice for other people, but
Mhm.
what we're sacrificing is we're doing away with our lesser selves and putting our better, best, more wiser self into a relationship. Because it does a relationship no good if one is turning into a doormat or folding into the other person. It's no longer a relationship of two people yoked together, pulling forward. So I think putting your best into and investing in each other is always wise and good, but it can't come at the expense of something that's not sustainable for what's good for the whole relationship. So we need to take that into account.
Absolutely. And I think the key of what you said is not being a doormat. I thought that I was being assertive and communicating all my needs, but now looking back, that kind of makes me laugh. Like, we always think we're doing this great job of this is like a want or a need that I have, and I really do need this. And then you realize when you're getting feedback back that they're not catching any of that. They get used to you over time if you keep showing up a certain way of you doing something over, and then you do become this doormat. So a big part of that is communication too, for sure.
Do you have a specific story about that?
I think that one still goes back to that 10 years earlier in our marriage, where the very end of it, I was like, no, I really need this. I need something for myself. But it built up so much and he didn't understand where I was at. I didn't even understand where I was at. We're just such a depleted mom needing something for myself and not really sure how to fill that need, that void, and trying to communicate that. And we both were looking at our families of origin, like how
Mhm.
he grew up, how I grew up, and thinking, this is what we saw modeled. We'll just do what we saw modeled, not realizing that was not working. And neither of us were very happy in that dynamic. And neither of us were very differentiated. We very much wanted the other person to change, didn't really understand why we couldn't connect and come together in that way. I don't even think really appreciated the way that we do now, our individuality in that, and wanted the other person to be more differentiated. It's almost like we were unknowingly seeking to connect in this codependent enmeshed relationship. I know I'm using a lot of jargon here. I'm trying to make it in layman's terms. We didn't realize that we were very needy, but in an unhealthy dynamic where it felt threatening and scary for us to go do something like a master's program or maybe develop a hobby that would take some time and take us outside of the house where the other one felt maybe alone.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
All right. Third piece of marriage advice people hear that you cringe at.
All right. I'm ready. Your spouse should be your best friend. Do you ever hear that one?
Yeah.
Okay. So I love my husband very much. And actually, this one I don't think about with my husband as much. My husband is also a therapist and he is an incredible communicator in a lot of ways, although you might not think that based on the stories I've told. But I have a lot of clients come in and they tell me that their spouse is not able to connect on an emotional level with them. And it's been really frustrating. And they wonder, oh, maybe this marriage is just not going to work out. And I hear these stories all the time. I sympathize, I do empathize, but my husband being such a good communicator, I don't get that part as much. But the part that I do understand is it's okay if your husband isn't everything to you in all of those realms. And that's what I work on with some of these clients too, is you can have friends that can meet some of your other needs or your wants socially or emotionally. It's okay to go to other people for some of those things too, not with that resentment, but just recognizing I can have these other friendships and interests outside of the marriage, and that's okay. Like letting go of trying to change your spouse. Like maybe you married an introvert that just really doesn't want to talk about all these mental health things like my husband and I talk about, or how people connect. And he might never change. And that's okay. That's that differentiation that I was talking about. You can't change their values and their beliefs and their personality, even though you might really want to and be really determined, it's not going to go anywhere positive or productive.
That makes sense. And I think Dr. Esther Perel said it this way: more than any other period in history than today, we demand more out of our marriages. Think
Mhm.
about it. We're living longer than we ever have.
Yeah.
So used to that, what's the life expectancy? 40, 50, die of
Oh, before, yeah.
tuberculosis, and then you
Mhm.
die, right? Back before. Now we're living to 80, 90. So of course our marriage is going to be a lot longer. Or people used to die in childbirth often. So it
Right.
wasn't too uncommon for there'd be a second or a third marriage due to problems like that. And now we're staying married longer, and yet we expect more out of our spouse, not to be only a provider or a companion, but also to be all of the things.
Mhm.
And that's a big ask.
Absolutely.
Some of the things that help me and my wife most in our relationship. Now, I think being really good friends is absolutely wonderful. Like, you got to love the person you're married to if you want to thrive in life. There's something really nice. But one of the things that's really helped me is just the power of gratitude and recognizing everything's a gift. The fact that I could wake up this morning, I'm just grateful for that when there are some people that didn't wake up today. That I can wake up with my wife in my arms, which I absolutely love. What a gift to have her hair in my face and just the way we talked, the way she talks. It's a gift. And the better we get at just recognizing the miracle of every day and the ordinary everyday goodness that people have and offer, I think helps us appreciate things a lot more and can move us more into a place of liking and accepting a lot easier.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the key, what you just said, that liking and accepting. And that's differentiation, not forcing them to look a certain way, be a certain way, but loving them regardless. I think there's some quote, I'm trying to remember it, something like, when you're engaged, it's keeping both eyes open. And when you're married, it's keeping one eye closed or something like that.
I
You know what
see.
I'm talking about?
Yeah, yeah.
So loving them where they're at whilst, that healthy, challenging in some ways, but that differentiation aspect of it, not demanding that they show up differently or they demanding that you do, but still encouraging each other to be your best self.
Yet there's a strong temptation in marriage to change your spouse. Can you
Oh,
tell me this story when you wanted to change your husband?
actually, yes, I can. This morning.
Let's hear it.
Okay, so I am really into exercising. I love it. I've loved it since I was 16, and I am very consistent. Like, that's my superpower. So I go to the gym, and just recently, probably in the last year, he started going with me. And this is something that I've wanted for so long. So I was really excited because we go early. We get there at 5, but fairly regularly. I try not to notice, but he will just read in the car for the first half, or he'll read in the building, or he'll like just do his own thing and just barely work out sometimes. And it is not how my brain works. I'm like, you're at the gym, like you work out, like you're here to do cardio. And that's not him. So this is me not being differentiated and
Wow.
trying to change him, but in this like kind of passive aggressive way. Hey, how was your workout? Why were you so late? Not in an admirable way, but my eyes said it. I don't even remember. On the way home from the gym, though, I said something like, it's good to have cardio too, like not just a little bit of lifting. And anyway, I got into it a little bit. And then afterwards, he calmly explained that it just felt like I was trying to change him or make him value something that he didn't really value in the same way. And I thought about that. Yeah, but it's totally true. I wasn't being differentiated. I was trying to change him into being something that I was and to value something in the same way that I did. And that's not going to help us come closer together. That's just going to alienate us more. So
Mhm.
I hope you will learn from my poor example. Not
Good.
to do it.
Yeah. I think as humans, we're very resistant to our spouses trying to change us. I
Yeah.
think it's very human nature to resist that and resist it strongly.
Yeah.
And there's definitely better approaches, but that's a fantastic way to talk about that differentiation piece. I am me, you are you, and I can come to peace and accept this. We
Yeah.
can look for ways we have strengths to build together. I think that's fantastic.
And one quick other thing to that too, before I wanted to fix things so much. I wanted to manage his feelings and the other person's feelings. And I was so focused on that instead of allowing people space to manage their own feelings, allowing them to work through their own struggles unless they are asking for help. And I can do that without resentment and filled with love and for the right intentions. And that's like that second part of my marriage journey, I feel, is leaning into that more and making sure that I am emotionally grounded enough so that I can let go more and stop controlling those things around me. Just accepting others and myself instead of taking the reins so often.
That's good. Kendra, before we leave, there's a question I ask many of my podcast guests, and I'm putting you on the spot here. These principles we're talking about are very important for any couple to thrive in their intimate relationships. It's this ability to work well together, the ability to be friends, ability to calm yourself down instead of trying to force solving a problem when you're not even physically in the right headspace to be able to solve that problem and so on. Now let's take things up a notch and put it into more of a sexual context. What would you say is a black belt sex tip for a couple who's working on these things to take their sexual relationship to the next level?
It's communicating and allowing yourself to be open and vulnerable and processing things verbally. I had a lot of resistance to things. I just went along with a lot of things sexually based on how I thought it should and shouldn't look. And that made it very hard. And I'm getting a little vulnerable here for me to climax. It took me years. And so when I finally started to have more frank conversations with him, why things felt difficult, why I was like emotionally just checking out during sex.
Mhm.
Until I finally started to talk to him about that experience. And he listened so well. And lo and behold, sex started to get more enjoyable and I wasn't avoiding it as much and I was staying more present. So it was opening up and risking sounding maybe a little bit crazy when I didn't understand it myself and leaning on him to explore that together.
What I love about your story right there is it does take two.
Yeah.
It does take two. And what a blessing it is to have a husband that would listen and take it all in without shame or judgment. Because you're like, am I crazy? Because what I'm about to tell you, just, I don't know if this is going to come out. That's
Right.
probably why you haven't expressed it to that point in your marriage, because you're yourself even just questioning or judging, is this even okay or not? But you're able to work through that together. And lo and behold, things got better right after. So that's great
That's
advice. All right, everyone, if you want to follow Kendra, where can people go to find you?
at Fulfillment Therapy or fulfillmenttherapy.org. You can check me out really anywhere fulfillment therapy. I'm there.
Great. Very good.
Thank you so much for listening. We hope you enjoyed it. As a reminder, please head over to our website to see our new courses as well as free resources that can help you engage better with your family and move towards a more fulfilling life, as well as taking 2 seconds to leave us a review so that we can keep spreading those positive ripples. Thank you so much and have a wonderful day.